Hello, and how are you feeling? Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Coaching from Not a Blue Tree with me, Gary Burns. And this episode is all about the presuppositions of NLP. The presuppositions are a set of reframes, a new way of understanding the world. They're not universal truths. They are simply a way of looking at the world, allowing you to be kinder, more accepting of the world around you. The reason I wanted to start with the presuppositions this season is because I think they encapsulate, for me, very much what NLP is all about. Because NLP is all about effecting and sustaining change, understanding the world around us, and understanding how we can influence and change that world. And the presuppositions for me kind of summarize what that's all about. And as I said before, they're not universal truths. Indeed, as you start to think about them, it's very easy to see ways in which they are potentially not true. However, if you adopt them as a way of being, as a way of understanding and being with the world, it changes the whole perspective you have on what's going on around you and what you do for yourself and what you do for change. So, let's go through them. So there are 14 presuppositions. So we start with respect for the other person's model of the world. So what this is saying is that we all are experiencing the world differently. We have our priorities, we have the things that matter to us, we have our values, we have our beliefs. And whatever those things are, however they manifest, however they present, it's important to respect that that's that person's model of the world, just as you will have your model of the world. And you would want people to respect that. And there is a huge difference, though, between respecting that model, so saying, okay, I understand that that's you, that's how you are, and I want you to understand how this is how I am, this is me, and agreeing with it, because the two are very different things. So I'm certain you've already met people in your life who you fundamentally disagree with. You hold different values, different beliefs, you've got different expectations, different priorities. There will be people who've done terrible things in their time. The point, though, is that is their reality. And we can only move forward if we understand what that reality is. And again, think about that. Think about what that means in your relationships with other people. Because if you can understand where people are coming from, why they're taking the stance that they are taking, that at times can be half the battle. And it's not necessarily about changing them or making them agree with you, or for you having to agree with them. But if you understand where they are in life, where they are in the world, that can make a huge difference in how you manage that relationship. The second presupposition is about behaviour and change having to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology. So what that means is you can't look at behaviour, you can't look at changing behaviour in isolation. You have to understand it in the bigger picture, in the sense of the context. And also in the ecology, so is it a win-win all round, or are there winners and losers? So you can observe the behaviour, you can observe the change, but then you need to understand in what context is it taking place in, and what is the ecology there. And again, this helps us understand, first of all, ourselves, our reason for changing ourselves. So we may have behaviours, there may be things about us that we want to change, that we want to do differently. But we need to understand where that comes from. What's the context in which that's happening? So sometimes behaviour change is driven by what feels like an enormous amount of things going wrong, in which case the focus will be slightly different from someone who's simply been making progress and is now ready for the next step. And again, we need to see that. We need to see that in others as well. The third presupposition is that resistance in a client is a sign of a lack of rapport. Now, this is a very interesting one. So this sort of starts from the therapeutic basis that if you're working with clients and there is resistance, it means that there's simply not enough rapport. You haven't got to that level of rapport where the person can be entirely honest about what's going on for them, what matters to them, and perhaps where the challenges lie. But this applies outside of the therapeutic relationship as well. When you're with people and you feel pushback from them, pushback in a way that's perhaps unexpected or unwelcome, then it's perhaps thinking, well, have we got the level of rapport here where they can be absolutely honest with me about the reasons for that pushback, the reasons for the resistance? Maybe they're simply pushing back because they don't like where this is going. Maybe they don't understand you well enough. And building rapport is so important, and I'll be talking about that in a future episode because I believe rapport underpins so many of our relationships. So just remember, if you feel pushback from people, if you feel resistance in those relationships, it's perhaps worth, rather than pushing forward with what you want to achieve, it's maybe worth taking a step back, seeing how you can further build that relationship with the other person for better outcomes in the longer term. The fourth presupposition is very much people are not their behaviours, and I think this is a really crucial one. What people do is what they do. But what they do is only what they're doing in any given moment. They're not doing that behaviour all of the time, 24/7. So there may be aspect of people that you're with, that you spend time with, whether you're working with them professionally, whether that's friends, family members, whoever. And there may be aspects of them that you don't find comfortable. There may be things that they do and say that cause you a bit of distress even. But it's remembering they're not just that behaviour. They are made up of multiple facets. And I think once we can see past those things that we dislike, that we find uncomfortable, we can perhaps start to see far more common ground. Now, the next presupposition is that everyone is doing the best they can with the resources that they have available. Now, this is always an interesting one, and when I bring this up in training where I've got a group of people, there's quite often a bit of dissent, a bit of pushback on this one. And there is that belief, and I'm sure you can think of examples just as I can, where you've been with people who really are not doing the very best. What they're doing is, at best, half-baked. They're possibly just scraping along doing the bare minimum, and you think, I know you could be doing a lot better here. The reality is, though, in any given moment, we really are doing the best that we can. And we may only be half-baked. We may be just scraping by with the bare minimum because that's all we feel able to do in that moment. So in that moment, we don't have more resources to us to be able to do better. And I think that doesn't justify people being half-baked. It doesn't justify half measures, whether that's from other people or whether that's from ourselves. But I think it does allow us to be a little bit kinder to the people around us and a little bit kinder to ourselves. Because I know there have been times when I've done something and thought, I could have done a lot better. And I've given myself a lot of grief for it. But it's then realising, no, in that moment, that was probably the best I could do. And then it's about understanding, well, what was limiting me in that moment? Just as it helps us to understand, well, what's limiting others in that moment. So it's always one to remember, one to think about when we're either not giving our best or we see other people not giving our best. What is it that's holding them back? And there always is something that holds people back. The next presupposition, I think, is critical, to calibrate on behaviour. And this is about saying that the most important information about a person is that person's behaviour. So I'm sure, just like I have, you've met people who talk a lot about change, about doing things, and nothing happens. And that's because words are easy. It's very easy to say, yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll make this change. Yes, I'll achieve that. Actually making it happen, though, can be a lot more challenging. So the trick is always to focus on what people are doing. And I think this is really a really interesting one when you start, particularly in the world of work, and you've got senior managers delivering a message. It's like, everything is great, we'll do this to support you, we'll do that to support you. But then you look at the reality of what is actually happening, of what those people are actually doing, and you see huge mismatch. And it's about being aware of that. So don't be fooled by the words. Look at what that person is actually doing. The next presupposition is the map is not the territory. And this is a very literal meaning in that a map tells you the geography, it shows you the lie of the land, but it misses out huge amounts. It doesn't give you the description of the countryside, the description of the cityscape. It doesn't tell you what the weather will feel like in that particular moment, how you might feel if you were there. And what this is reminding us is that the words people use are not necessarily what they actually mean. And a really good example of this is the word weird. For some people, weird is a good word. People want to be weird, seen as being weird. Others, it's an absolute no-no. Weird is a bad thing. So sometimes when people are talking and you think you're getting a sense of what they're saying, it's worth checking in to make sure that what they're saying is actually what they mean. And this is where the art of sort of summarizing, paraphrasing comes in really well. Because sometimes, in fact quite a lot of the time, you will get it right. Sometimes though, you'll summarize what someone said, or you'll check in just to make sure you've understood, and they'll look at you like you're mad. No, that's not what I meant at all. And I think it always reminds me that some people are very, very articulate, can express themselves incredibly well, and some people less so. And if you understand that the map is not the territories, that sometimes people are using language in a way because they simply lack the words to be able to do it better. And so checking in, understanding, making sure you really are on the same page is so crucial. The next presupposition is all about you being in charge of your mind and therefore your results. And I think this is just so true. No one can make you change. No one can make you do anything differently. You have to want to do it for yourself. And indeed, the only really effective change comes when you decide to make that change for you, not for others, not for what other people may think, but simply doing it for yourself. Now, the next one ties in earlier with the notion of people are doing the best they can with the resources they have, because the reality is, and this is the next presupposition, is people have all the resources they need to succeed and to achieve their desired outcomes. So the reality is, we do have all those resources. It doesn't mean we have the answers to everything, that we can do everything, that we have a complete and infinite skill set. But on the days when we're feeling resourceful and resourced, we know what we can do, we know where to turn to get the assistance, and we also understand where the gaps in our ability may be and how we can plug those gaps. And equally, there'll be days when it's just not happening. And again, I think it's important, if you can understand this, to be kind to yourself on those days when actually you're just not making it happen for whatever reason, and being kinder to yourself in that sense. And also understanding then on the days when actually everything is falling into place, that you need to make the most of those days. Those are the days when you're going to be your most productive. And it also helps if you understand that actually you may be feeling a bit unresourceful. And so what have you got to do? What have you got to do to build that level of resourcefulness up? What can you do? What can you shift? The next presupposition is all about procedures increasing wholeness. So everything we do, everything we learn should add to us. It should give us more. It should make us more. It should open up more opportunities and choices. And if we find we're doing things that are shutting down options, then we need to think about, is that the right course of action? And similarly, when we're with other people, are we helping them to do more, to become more? And are they doing things to us that give us more? Because everything should increase that sense of wholeness. We should feel more and more complete as we go through life. And alarm bells should start ringing when it feels like it's the opposite. The next presupposition is the sense of there is only feedback. And now, this is a really powerful reframe in the sense that we take steps to make something happen. And if we get what we want, great. If it all goes horribly wrong, though, we end up with something else. And we can see that, and we frequently do see that as failure. And what this is suggesting, what about if we do away with that concept of failure? And we just look at what's happened and we look at what we've got and we think, you know what? I set out to achieve something else and now I have this. What do I need to do? What steps do I need to do differently to create the outcome that I do want? So we take the outcome simply as feedback. This is where I got to. This is different from where I wanted to be. And now I need to reevaluate and change course. And just imagine for a moment what you would do if there was no sense of failure, if it really was only feedback. What would you want to do differently? Now, the next presupposition is the meaning of communication is the response you get. And I think this is a brilliant presupposition because sometimes we say things and the response we get back is as though we're talking different languages. We're on different planets here. So it's always worth remembering, if you get a response from someone that just doesn't fit in with what you think you were saying, then you need to reframe the question. You need to reframe what you're saying. And this is always an interesting one to remember. When you're observing politicians answer questions that they really don't want to answer, because they don't answer the question, and the skillful questioner will gradually turn the question around so there's nowhere else for them to go. So it's worth remembering that when you get a response that doesn't seem to fit in with what you were saying, what's that all about? And what do you need to do to reframe so that you get a response in line with what you're saying? The penultimate presupposition is the law of requisite variety. And what this is saying is the person who's most flexible will control the system. So the more flexible you are in your approach, the greater your chance of success. And I think that's almost feels like common sense to me, in that if you are very rigidly sticking to one course of action, if that course of action leads you somewhere different from where you want to be, then you've got no other options. But if you're prepared to open your mind, open your eyes and look at other ways of doing things, so having that plan A, B and C, you're far more likely to succeed. And the final presupposition, a bit like one of the earlier ones about increasing wholeness, is that all procedures should be increasing choice. And again, this is really important. Everything we do should open things up, give us more choices, allow us to feel more complete. And again, if you're aware of things are shutting you down, then you need to be questioning what's going on. And just as if you get the impression that your actions are shutting down things for others, again, you need to be thinking about your motives. Those then are the 14 presuppositions. As I've said, and as I've been going through them, you can probably already think of times when they just don't feel true. And that's the crucial thing with the presuppositions. They're not saying they're absolute truth. They're not even saying they are complete truths or always true. They are, though, a way of thinking, a way of viewing the world. They are a way of approaching the world and the people around you. They are a way of approaching your own challenges, your own desire for change. They give you new perspectives. They allow you to be a little kinder with yourself and those around you. They give you a new way of approaching the challenges that come up in life, as they're always going to come up. So take some time. Review the 14 presuppositions. Think about what they mean for you. Think about what would happen, what becomes different if you adopt them. What do you gain? What becomes better? What becomes better for you and better for those around you? And finally, how are you thinking and acting differently? And remember, the presuppositions, as I said at the beginning, they are a way of thinking and experiencing the world differently. And how good does that feel?